Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's beautiful to see your smiling faces and your waves. And it's a beautiful opportunity we have to dive very deep into the topic of holy relationship and spiritual awakening. So I'd like to welcome everyone. Soren was saying we're in the middle of a Holy Relationship online weekend retreat, so we have a lot of participants from around the world for that. We also have participants joining us here for the movie. We have Spanish participants, English participants. All in total, I think there's over 196 people from countries like Australia, Belgium, Bermuda, Brazil, Canada, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, India, Japan, Mexico, and of course United States, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, Taiwan, UK. Thank you for joining in this beautiful opportunity, because I want to just go down the rabbit hole with you into the depth of the experience of our connectedness and our love and our union, to contact the light, to make contact with the light that we all are and we all share, and feel that as a direct experience. So, for those of you who come to us regularly, you know that we open ourselves to prayer for a movie to show on Saturday and during this online retreat weekend for Holy Relationship. And we put out a poll, and then people vote for different themes. And then we see what the themes are. So for this week, for the English poll, the number 3 themes that came in, first place was letting go of judgments and taking back projections. Second place was allowing myself to freely communicate, which fits in with all the transparency we've been witnessing on this Holy Relationship weekend. We just had a beautiful panel discussion last night that had the beautiful transparency with everyone on the panel. And then, of course, Francis had a beautiful opening session Friday, which was all about transparency and being in this deep purpose and seeing a new way of looking at the world and a new way of looking at relationships that is involving connection to spirit, connection to the light, connection to Jesus. Coming in third at the English poll was allowing darkness to move through. So those are really excellent themes for our movie and for our weekend retreat. And in the Spanish poll, it was the same 3, but they were just reversed. Number 1 was allowing darkness to move through. In second place was letting go of judgments and taking back projections. And third was allowing myself to freely communicate. So I wanted to open up today with sharing with you a bit of context. We have a lot of people joining us here from around the world, and thank you so much for taking the time to give your day over to this experience. And we have co-living centers joining us from different parts of the world, from Utah and Spain and Mexico, and we're all here to open our hearts up in a spiritual awakening. A lot of times with A Course in Miracles, people come across the book in many different ways, and it's extremely profound, and for them, most of their journey becomes practicing A Course in Miracles, practicing the teachings, living the principles through applying the workbook lessons. But oftentimes, it's such a deep dive through interacting with the book and praying and connecting with spirit internally that that a little bit of context can be helpful. What do I mean by context? What's the context for spiritual awakening? The deeper you go into spiritual awakening, you realize it's not about personality development. It's not about self-improvement. It's not about making the world a better place. It's not about improving the human condition. You actually realize that, as has been shared this weekend, that it's about transcending a perceptual problem of complete sleep, or we'll say falsity, being completely circumscribed with false beliefs and false perceptions, in which nothing is stable, nothing is reliable, nothing is consistent. Over the centuries, we've heard talk in many cultures about heaven and hell, and there's some point when people look around at the struggles and challenges that they're going through as part of the human condition, and sometimes the thought will cross their mind, is this hell? Am I in hell? I'm not talking about a burning fire. I'm just talking about the struggles and pain and challenges and heartbreaks of the human condition. And so it's interesting at this point in human history, because when we seem to have a pandemic and we seem to be experiencing the usual ups and downs of human emotions that are related to the challenges and the struggles of seeming to be alive on planet Earth at this time, the question could be raised, is there a context? Is there some kind of a bigger picture that would be helpful to me to be aware of in terms of my spiritual awakening? And of course there is. For me, the context was reading the lives of the mystics and the saints, looking at the perennial wisdom of all the ways that point to transcendence of distorted perceptions, transcending false beliefs, transcending these fluctuating human emotions, and coming to experience something that's far, far beyond the world. And the context of that is that with mysticism and with the lives of the saints, they would occasionally have experiences where they would pierce the veil of perception and have these extraordinary mystical experiences. And I'd like to talk about a couple aspects of that because I think it relates very much to the movie I'm going to show today and to the whole context of spiritual awakening. The first thing I'm going to talk about is visions. This is quite common in many, many spiritual traditions where there'll be apparitions and there'll be visions that will appear. And the main thing you need to know about that is that visions and apparitions are always meant to inspire you to go deeper into your direct connection with the light. They are not meant to induce fear. That's why for many people who say, well, I've read about visions and apparitions, but I haven't had one, it's because if there's too much fear in the mind, Jesus or Mother Mary or the angels are not going to appear to you in a form that will scare you. If they would show up in your bedroom or your living room and you have too much fear, that would not be helpful in your spiritual awakening. It would be more traumatic than beatific. So these apparitions and visions must come when there's a readiness for them, and there's also a sense of willingness for them. And they can be extremely helpful in that context because they expand your faith in what seems to be the unseen. And if the mind is asleep and dreaming this world and it's addicted to these perceptions of bodies and distinct situations and circumstances and separate aspects of a fragmented world, which is what the Bible in Corinthians calls looking through a darkened glass. If your mind has become accustomed to looking through a darkened glass, then it is by definition afraid of the light. That's why the images were made, to put a veil over the light. So A Course in Miracles is basically reminding us that you are afraid of your brothers and sisters because you are afraid of the light that is behind the veil. From the perspective of the mind that's asleep, it believes now that these images, these bodies, these places, these planets, these time-space situations are real, and therefore what this is covering over is the light, which is what is actually real. So everyone who believes they're moving through time and space as a human being is really what I would call they're twice removed from reality. Twice removed from reality in the sense that the light of heaven has been pushed out of awareness and there's been a complete amnesia around the light. And then the darkness that comes from believing in something other than the light, other than God, that has also been pushed out of awareness. So that's your double amnesia. That's your twice removed from reality. The light has been pushed out of awareness and the darkness has been pushed out of awareness. And so the human being seems to experience the world as if the world is reality, when actually the world is a dream that is projected from subconscious fear, from unconscious fear. That's really what the world is. God didn't create the world. The light didn't create the world. The world is false images appearing real to a mind that's sleeping and dreaming and has forgotten that it's dreaming. It's now in, we'll say, double oblivion in perception because it's actually taking the images to be real. Now, in the context of a holy relationship online retreat, and some of the things that Francis talked about on Friday, which for some of you who are just joining the movie, you can actually go to YouTube and watch Francis's opening talk. It may give a little more context for what I will be sharing today. But basically, when we think of relationships, we come with the idea of bodies. Whether you're thinking of relationships to other human beings, or maybe you're thinking of relationships to your pets, or to nature, to the animal kingdom, as well as the human kingdom, or even the insect kingdom, and so on and so forth. There's the thought of bodies is very much tied into relationships. And as Francis was sharing on Friday, actually, holy relationship is pointing us to a state of mind, to a shared purpose, to another way of looking at the world. And holy relationship is like the answer to a distorted, fragmented perception. Holy relationship is seeing that you share a purpose with everything and everyone that you perceive, without exception. So when we begin to talk about healing through relationships, you'll notice that I talk a lot about that relationships are mirrors of the mind. Relationships as they are perceived in this world are simply mirrors of consciousness, mirrors of thoughts, mirrors of beliefs. And that is the value that you have for the use of relationships with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. They had a Holy Relationship panel recently where I believe Eric was sharing the idea that you do not want anything that you want to come of a relationship. That's pretty striking. You do not want anything that you want to come of a relationship. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that the things that you want from a relationship are the things that you still want to get from a relationship. And as Francis was sharing, that's the problem. It's the ego is the getting mechanism. So when it thinks of relationships, it thinks of what is it going to give me? What is it going to provide me? What am I going to get out of this? That's basically the mindset and the attitude of the ego. What's in it for me? What am I going to get from this? It could be security. It could be a sense of respect or attention. It could be pleasure. It could be one of many things, but be assured that if there is a belief in lack, then the ego is going to use the perception of the world to try to fulfill the belief in lack from something in the world. And that's the problem. That is the ego's use of relationships. In fact, that's not only the ego's use of relationship, but that's why the ego made the bodies in the first place, to perpetuate itself, to perpetuate a belief in separation from God, to perpetuate self-hatred, to perpetuate feelings of abandonment, to perpetuate feelings of betrayal and rejection. Wow. That's why the world was made. The ego made the world to perpetuate itself, and it is nothing more than a death wish, a belief to be something other than God created you to be. So, if we really come at it in a very direct and simple way, as Francis was doing on Friday, we can see that the world was made out of a belief in autonomy, that you could have a separate identity apart from the Christ, apart from the light, apart from God. And then the ego's perception is everything and everyone must serve its mental slavery and perpetuate this sense of mental slavery by using people, places, things, situations to reinforce separation. How do you do that? You simply look at the world as a place where you can get what you want. And I assure you that anyone who comes to planet Earth or to time and space doesn't really know what they want. If they really knew that God and heaven were available, they wouldn't come searching in time and space for something, anything. There would be no point to come. So Jesus tells us that everyone who comes to this world comes without a self and then tries to make one up as they go along. Well, that is a real trip. That's a fantasy trip. That's a fictitious trip of looking for something in nothing. And of course, it always ends in disappointment, even though there's never really an ending. It's a perpetuation of looking for love where it cannot be found. So The context I mentioned about the visions is that when you have visions or apparitions, it's because there's a part of your mind that's ready to be shown that there's something much more than this perceptual world of time and space can offer. And there have been these appearances throughout time that are very, very helpful. In modern terms, for those of you who study A Course in Miracles, there's Gary Renard and Arten and Persa appearing on his couch in Maine. That's kind of a modern day version of visions and apparitions that someone who studies A Course in Miracles might be familiar with. But throughout the centuries, these apparitions have appeared, and they are striking. When there is an appearance, it seems to be beyond the common accepted perceptions of the world, and we can say that that's why they're so striking, because they're not expected. It's almost like you could think of an appearance or a vision as, like, in some sense, like a divine intervention to your mind, to remind you that there's something way beyond this world, to remind you that there's something that you've forgotten that you need to remember, and it comes to you in that way. Now, there's those appearances and those visions are always perceptual, so they're always just the Holy Spirit's use of symbols to reach the mind with a reminder, with a message. And then beyond perceptions, there's what we call revelation. And Jesus talks about revelation at the beginning of his text. He talks about revelation and miracles in the context. Miracles are always more interpersonal. They're much more helpful at the beginning of your mind opening up to the light, because the mind has to relate to symbols, and miracles are very interpersonal. They give you a reminder of the peace. They're like a little snapshot of the calmness, of the tranquility that is available at any instant. And that's why Jesus called his course A Course in Miracles, because the miracles help stabilize your perception from being so up and down and so variable and so inconsistent to starting to become consistent. When your mind is consistently miracle-minded, then you're going from upside down perception to right side up. You're seeing things from the perspective of the mind and seeing the false as false. That's why there's no order of difficulty in miracles, and there's no hierarchy of illusions, because when you are in your right mind, you can calmly look upon any scene or appearance in the world. And I mean calmly. It's stately calm. It's so peaceful. And beyond the realm of miracles, there's what we could call revelation. And Jesus talks a lot about revelation. Revelation unites you directly with God. The revelations aren't a snapshot. They are a direct experience of the light beyond the veil. They come from God, but there is no reciprocal arrangement in revelation. That's why the things are revealed. The light reveals itself to your mind directly, and there is no contribution from the human being in this revelation. And Jesus says the emotion of awe is reserved for revelation, because you are directly one with the light in your experience, and that is coming from God. And Jesus can help with the revelation readiness. It's very rare. And yet Jesus is preparing the mind to have that revelatory experience. Helen Schuckman, the scribe of the Course, had a revelation in a subway when she was in New York City. I've had friends throughout my life that I've known who have had revelations, and their entire perspective of the world is changed significantly, because once there's a direct experience of the light, you never really look upon the world in the same way. And I had 3 revelatory experiences where I completely merged with the light, and it just sets your mind, it sets your whole purpose and your whole perspective of the world in a new context. That's what I mean by a broader context. Once you have a direct experience of the light, you never see anyone or anything in the same way. You don't perceive relationships in the same way that you once did. You don't perceive time in the same way that you once did. So, how does that relate to holy relationship? Well, holy relationship, as Francis was sharing, is a perspective on the world. And this perspective has to be taught and learned in, you might say, over and over in terms of time, in order to experience it in a stable way. So miracles kind of give you a glimpse or a snapshot of the perspective. But holy relationship is a phenomenal teaching, learning accomplishment. You might say that your purpose as seemingly a human being in this world is to train your mind to come into the experience of the holy relationship. And this is not a relationship between 2 people. This is a perspective on looking upon the whole world. When you're in holy relationship, you are in holy relationship with everyone and everything, as Francis was sharing. This is not between people, or between people and animals, or between people and trees, or people and nature. This is a perspective in which you could say you experience everything as unified. It's in quantum physics, it's called the quantum field. And that quantum field is just a state of awareness that everything is absolutely connected. Now, this is frightening to the human being. There's a fear of the connection in the mind, because everything that is perceived as separate is based on the ego. And this perspective that involves holy relationship is inspired and shared of the Holy Spirit. So this is allowing the Holy Spirit to show you, through teaching and learning, through a purification of thoughts in awareness, and coming to the highest state of consciousness that you can possibly achieve. The tippy top of consciousness is this enlightened perspective that we could call happy dream, or the real world, or true perception. We could call it the quantum field. It's what everything is about. This is where learning ends. And you might say, there's an end to learning. Yes, it seemed to have a beginning and it will seem to have an end. There's no learning in heaven. Nothing needs to be remembered in heaven. Nothing is apart from the light in heaven. And Revelation shows you that. You have a direct experience of the light that simply is heaven. But in this realm we could call time and space, in the sleeping mind, the top goal is forgiveness. And the accomplishment of forgiveness is the holy relationship. This is the symbol of the forgiven world, where you see that you are in absolute relationship with everything and everyone. Now, the panel that was last night, on the relationship panel, there was a beautiful witness of transparency, because in order to experience holy relationship, you must learn that you can keep nothing hidden. And you would not want to keep anything hidden, because what is hidden is pushed out of awareness. It's the subconscious or the unconscious. And as long as there is a value of private thoughts, as long as secrets seem valuable, then you will dream a dream of fragmentation. And those secrets and those private thoughts will seem to be acted out in the dream that you perceive. And it's not going to be a happy dream. Secrets never produce a happy dream. Private thoughts never produce a happy dream. The ego will say, wow, it's not so bad. You can fantasize of things that will give you a sense of happiness. But what the ego doesn't tell you is you never really find happiness in a haven of guilt. It will try to make specific things, lifestyle things, that are good in its judgment, and it says, here's a little haven in a storm of guilt. Just stay inside the haven. Don't mess with the rest. It's wicked. But stay in the haven. Don't go out into the storm. And of course, we have tried that. We tried to make a little haven of peace in a storm of guilt, and it has not worked. because there were still subconscious beliefs and thoughts that were underneath. And those always continue to generate a storm. So the movie that we've been given today to open up to this holy relationship perspective is a very recent movie, and I've actually never shown this movie. So for some of you who've been watching the Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment and maybe have seen me show various movies over and over to approach this beautiful forgiven state of mind, this movie is the first time that I'm showing it. And the movie is called Fatima. This is a movie about the occurrences from over a century ago in rural Portugal, north of Lisbon, out in the rural areas of Portugal, a little bit north east of Lisbon, and that's where Fatima is. And some of you might know that in the Bible, it says, a little child, and a little child shall lead them. Well, in this case, we are going to have 3 children, and their names are Lucia and Francisco and Jacinta. And these 3 children are going to experience a vision. In fact, it's not just one vision, it's going to be a series of visions. And this is a beautiful teaching in cracking open the mind towards the light and towards holy relationship. Because this movie is, with these 3 children, it's not so much a movie of a man and a woman coming together as soulmates to try to reach God together. This is a movie of three children who see something and it speaks directly to their mind. It's basically Mother Mary appearing to them out in nature, and appearing to them in 6 different appearances, that basically she has a message for them. And this is very similar to Jesus and the Holy Spirit with the Course. There's a message. There's a message here. There's a message that you're to receive. And there's a message that you're to strengthen in awareness by teaching it to learn it. It's not an accident that you come across me or the Course. It's not an accident that there are things that speak to you from this book. And like these 3 children, once you come upon this message, then you are called upon, you are given a mission, you are given an assignment to teach and learn this for yourself. And the one thing that's so beautiful about this movie is the time frame. First of all, the movie takes place, I believe, around 1917. So that's over a century ago. But the appearance of Mother Mary is coming 19 centuries after she appeared in Galilee. So this is an apparition that's coming 19 centuries. That's over 1900 years after the appearance back in the days of her son, Jesus. And so this is a very profound experience, because for the children, Lucia's mother is very devout Catholic, and she prays the Rosary, and many Catholics of the time are praying to Jesus, praying to Mother Mary, praying to the saints for help. This is the context of World War I going on. This is 1917 is the year before the last huge pandemic was on Earth, the Spanish flu. Now we're dealing with COVID-19, but this rolls us back to just before the Spanish flu swept around the world. And also at a time of devastation in Europe with World War I. The horrific perceptions of war, of bodies being torn apart, children not coming home to their families if they've gone off to fight in war, and many young men dying in the war. This is a time of poverty in Europe, extreme poverty in Europe. This is an extreme time in human history, and that's why I think this movie is also very relevant for us right now, because we don't have a world war going on now, but we have a pandemic going on, and when there seems to be extreme crisis in terms of poverty, hunger, just extreme conditions for what we would say survival of the body, there can be a crack and an opening for this greater context in spiritual awakening. And that's what I want you to really experience in the movie today, that this is an opportunity for you to get in touch with the greater context of spiritual awakening. to have a piercing in the mind. As Jesus says, you can learn from the experiences of others. He says in the Course, you can learn from my experiences. And all of Jesus's teachings are pointing to a transcendent experience that goes beyond time and space. Jesus is not trying to make better worldly conditions. He's not trying to improve the human condition. He's teaching that forgiveness, through forgiveness of the ego and of illusions, you can remember God. You can remember the light. And this light, I could say words about this light, but once you have a direct experience of this light, then you realize, by contrast, that there's nothing that this world offers that could even slightly compare to the experience of reality, of the light. So in this movie, we have 3 children who are friends, and they're just going out, and they're out in nature, and they're just going out to be together like 3 childhood friends. And they are going to have an experience of this vision. And initially, one will see it first, Lucia. Some of you know the story of Jesus. Mary Magdalene was the first to see the risen Jesus. Why? Because she was ready. Remember I talked about readiness and willingness? She was ready and willing. She wasn't frightened by seeing an apparition of the risen Jesus. And then she, of course, went to the upper room where the apostles were all locked in and barricaded, and she said, I have seen him. So now we have, in 1916 here in rural Portugal, we have 3 children that are going to see the Mother Mary appear to them. First Lucia, the oldest of the 3, and then Jacinta will see her, and then finally Francisco will see her as well. And that's even beautiful. It's kind of cascading. You have to be ready to see. Some of you might have seen the movie with Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come, where he seems to die, to pass away, and then he starts to see various people. He sees somebody that's like a helper to him, a teacher, and he's saying, why can't I see my children? I want to see my children. And his guide says, when you're ready, you will see them. So this apparition for these 3 children is based on their readiness. They're actually ready and willing for this. And that's why they can apprehend and experience this vision, because they're ready. It's a symbol that their hearts are ready for. Now, what I like about this is, once these 3 children see Mother Mary, at first Francisco, he cannot hear her. He can just see her, and he has to have the 2 girls. What's she saying? The girls are so ready, they can hear Mother Mary and see Mother Mary. And he's like, what's she saying? They fill him in. This is beautiful too, because it just shows you that you'll see the real world, you'll see the happy dream when you're ready, and not an instant before you're ready to see it. When you're willing and you're ready, it's there. There's nothing the light is holding back. It's just that when you have a state of fear and you have a state of doubt, if you have a state of mind where there's still attack thoughts, you will not perceive the happy dream, because the mind's not ready. The mind still is an investment in attack thoughts, in judgments, in doubts. That's what our movie poll was. That's how we transcend the judgments and the doubts. It's through faith. And, you'll notice with these three that there's a lot of talk about praying. The three children are very used to praying the Rosary. Why the Rosary? Well, this is a Catholic family, a Catholic society, and they pray the Rosary. It's part of their devotion. Hail Mary, full of grace. It's part of their practice. And to me, this is why it is Mother Mary appearing to them. It's coming in the context of their belief system. Lucia's mother is praying a lot to Mother Mary. There's a lot of rosaries coming and a lot of prayers, but also we learn with Lucia's mother is that there's still quite a bit of fear mixed into the prayer, in the sense that she's praying for an outcome. Her son has gone off to fight in the war, in World War I, and she is praying to Mother Mary for his safe return. So she's not necessarily praying for world peace or praying for enlightenment, but she is praying fervently with her prayer beads and her rosaries for the return of her son. The mother is quite fixated on this outcome. She wants her son to come back, and she's prepared to do any kind of sacrificial prayers, or is whatever it takes to pray to Mother Mary to deliver her son back. So you also get a sense from this movie about the ladder of prayer that Jesus talks about in the Song of Prayer, where Jesus says, as long as you believe in this world, you cannot help but pray for specifics. Pray for this one to get well. Pray for this one to have a safe trip. Or in the case of the movie, pray for my son to make it home safe, alive, back from the war. And yet, war is probably the most extreme example in terms of perception of the belief in separation from God. For most people on the planet, when they see what seems to be the horrors of war, of people, humans, fighting against other human beings, killing other human beings in droves for some kind of cause, so-called cause, or something in the world, then this is an extreme. And so we are going to see that one of the messages of Mother Mary to the children is basically, she's going to say, my son, she's talking about Jesus, is offended. My son is offended. Now for you, a Course in Miracles students, you're like, why is Jesus offended by anything in the world? Why would Jesus be offended by a world war even? The Christ is the pure light. The Christ has no offense. The Christ knows heaven. The Christ knows the oneness. The Christ is one with God. How is Mother Mary's message of my son is offended, is greatly offended? And it's basically she's saying, pray. I'm calling you to pray. I'm calling you to pray the Rosary. I'm calling you to pray, because it's not that Christ is offended by the world war. It's that the mind that's sleeping and dreaming is offended by its belief in the ego, by belief in something other than God. When you pray, you're praying to heal the offense in your own mind, which is the ego. You're praying to let go of a death wish. You're praying to let go of that which has nothing to do with God, never has and never will. You're praying to let go of the separation. So to me, I thought, this is beautiful in the context of 1916, a world war happening, 3 children off in the fields, And Mother Mary's come to say, my son is offended and you need to pray. Well, I don't think the message is any different for those studying A Course in Miracles. You know, if you're offended in your relationships, you are offended by Christ. You are offended by the light. If you're offended by your partners, if you're offended by your children, if you're offended by politicians and their actions, if you're offended by the pollution of this world or the divisions, the different polarities, political polarities, polarities in countries, if you're offended by military coups taking over democratic countries, if you're offended by cancer or all seeming forms of sickness, you are offended in the light. It's the ego awareness that is taking offense, and it's afraid of the light. The problem is not in the world. The problem isn't with your partner. The problem isn't with your neighbor. Here's my buddy Antonio from Portugal, Saint Antonio. This is your movie. This is Fatima. There is no way escaping this, Antonio. If anyone is offended in anything of this world, they are offended because they are holding on to the ego belief system. And we're going to have Mother Mary, beautiful Mother Mary, come and say to us, pray, pray. Use the power of prayer. She's going to deliver, back in 1916, the same message of A Course in Miracles, that prayer is the medium of miracles. You don't need careers to reach God. You don't need special relationship partners to reach God. You don't need possessions to reach God. You don't need physical comforts and conveniences to reach God. Prayer is the medium of miracles. Miracles light the way to awakening. Miracles make your mind ready for revelation, for direct experience of God's love. Direct experience. We're not talking about concepts here. We're talking about an actual, direct experience of the light. And that's what Mother Mary is offering. She is a symbol. She is a vision that's saying, you need to pray. Prayer is the solution. Trying to make interpersonal relationships better is not the solution. Trying to improve the planet Earth with more devices, more mechanisms, more technology, more improvements in terms of physicality. That's not what is asked for. The prayer of your heart. What did Jesus teach in the Sermon on the Mount? Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. That's what Jesus taught. And that's what Mother Mary is teaching. She's saying, pray. You have a very powerful mind, and you have a means of reaching God directly, of remembering who you are as the Christ, and remembering your beloved Creator through the power of prayer. The message is not you need more money. The message is not you need better conditions on earth. This message is coming to these 3 children. And this is during the times of a world war, where there seems to be poverty and bodies that are coming back to Portugal, bloodied, limbs missing, broken bones, bloodied bodies, and here is Mother Mary coming with this beautiful message. Now, what I like about this movie is once these 3 children see Mother Mary, and they do listen to her, she is appearing to them, and they're all ears. She's coming as a presence from heaven into their lives. And as soon as they take in her message, they basically look at each other and say, we have to promise each other we're not going to share this with anyone. But you know how that goes. When you make a promise to your friends, I'm not going to share this. As soon as the cat gets out of the bag, as soon as you start to share this, it's going to be a revolt. And who is going to be offended? The ego is going to be offended. Now, the ego may take many forms. It may seem that your own mother is offended that you just saw Mother Mary after she's been praying the Rosary for decades, and now your 10-year-old daughter is like, oh, yeah, I saw her. She talked to me. You want to see Mom get upset? Just tell her, I just saw Mother Mary, the one you've been praying for all those years with her beads. Yeah, I just saw her out in the grass. I talked to her. She talked to me. If you want to see politicians get upset, if you want to see the church get upset, if you want to see the priests get upset, if you want to see the Monsignor get upset, if you take something directly from Spirit and you're told to teach what you would learn, honestly teach what you would learn. I know this word came up in the relationship talk last night, honesty. Well, honesty from Jesus' perspective is consistency. And these 3 little ones have seen Mother Mary, and now all they are required to do is be honest about it, to receive the message and to give it away. But this message is deep. This isn't your typical message. This is a message of returning to heaven. And watch how the ego reacts to such a simple, pure sighting and simple, pure message. Watch how the mayor of Fatima reacts. Watch how Mom reacts. Watch how the parents react. Watch how the priest react. Watch the reactions of the world of time and space to the light. If you doubt that you are afraid of the light, watch how the world reacts to this simple message of prayer and love. Now, how does this relate to holy relationship? Well, some of you have noticed that when you follow your spiritual calling, that sometimes your partner will react, or your parents will react, or your children will react, or the neighbors will react, or society will react. Why is this surprising? Why is this surprising? These are just doubt thoughts in the mind that are acted out so that you can let go of the doubt thoughts. That's all. The whole point is to let go of the doubt and the fear, to let go of the belief in attack and to be in alignment with the light. It's really very simple. But when you are offended by a partner, or you are offended by a friend, or offended by an event that seems to occur in time and space, Jesus is telling us, Mother Mary is telling us, pluck the offense from your mind. You are not offended by something outside of you. You are offended by an ego attack thought or judgment that you're still holding on to. You're offending yourself. by believing in the ego. Because your Christ self is not offended. That's just what is. The light is not offended. But your mind that believes in these attack thoughts and judgments, that's where the offense is occurring. So these sweet little children are like little saints. They are little mystics because they basically have received a message and they're happy. They're happy that Mother Mary appeared to them and gave them this message, and they're happy to give it away, and then they're going to be met with the doubt thoughts of the ego, which basically will say, you didn't see that, that didn't happen to you, and you have to recant, you have to tell the truth. That's what the world is going to say to these little children. Tell the truth. Tell that you were lying. Tell that you made the whole thing up. And yet their purpose is to simply give away and teach what they would learn. You'll even get a sense from this movie that the little young girl, Jacinta, when she passed away the following year with the Spanish flu, we get a little snippet of a reminder that when they exhumed her body, this little 7-year-old, at that time we'll say 8-year-old body of Jacinta, when they exhumed the body of Jacinta, it had not decayed. Some of you know the story of Paramahansa Yogananda. You know, after Paramahansa passed away, his body remained in a state of non-decay for days, for weeks. And this little 7-year-old who saw Mother Mary, her body did not decay when they exhumed the body. That's just a symbol. These are all just symbols. But this is just a symbol of devotion. If this little 7-year-old can see Mother Mary and stay with the truth of what Mother Mary was saying to her, you can do it too. We can do it. If Jacinta can do it, you can do it. You've got a Course in Miracles. You've got an instruction, a lesson a day to give your whole heart over to pray with all your heart and pray for it to become fully embraced without exceptions. You know, just one lesson from the Course. There is nothing to fear. If you embrace it with all of your heart, if you put your full prayer and the power of your mind into that one lesson, there is nothing to fear, then that is taking you into the experience of the kingdom of heaven. Just one lesson applied with no exceptions takes you into the holy relationship. It takes you into a perspective that sees everyone and everything as the same. That there's nothing apart from you. Your mind, our mind, contains it all. So I hope you enjoy the movie, because this is a real trip, and it's an awakening. Because once you get a taste of how glorious God is, all you have to do, like these 3 little children, is tell the truth. All you have to do is tell the truth. And I mean, the truth is very happy. You will want to tell the truth. You will want to give it away, because it's who you are. The truth is who you are, and that is a beautiful fact that is a creation of God. So enjoy the movie, and I may pop in a few times as an apparition. A David apparition may come into the movie a few times, but take this movie into your heart and really feel the power of prayer. Beautiful. Okay, here we have it. They have the first appearance of Mother Mary, and then Jacinta tells the parents what happened. It's interesting to me as I watch this scene with the parents that Jacinta's father is the one who says, what if they are telling the truth? 7-year-old little girl, and her father says, what if they are telling the truth? He's got an open mind to the children. And then Lucia's mother reacts, why of all people would she choose you? You can see the fear and the doubt thoughts starting to rise up already in just sharing the experience with the parents. And that's what I would like to say to you, with those of you who work with A Course in Miracles. What if Jesus is telling the truth? What if this is actually from the Son of God? What if it's a gift to take you back into remembrance of our Creator, of God? You saw the little look on Jacinta's face. She was real. She was real. And it's the faith of just accepting what is given to you at face value and giving your faith. Because this book does come from Jesus. And Jesus does encourage everything for the awakening to remembrance of God. But you have to have the faith like Jacinta, you have Francisco, and then here's Lucia in the last scene praying to Mother Mary in the church, in the town's church, saying, Jacinta, she's so brave. She's already asking for forgiveness because of her momentary doubt. So now the children have experienced something, and Jacinta's right. We're her messengers. And when you receive A Course in Miracles, you are a messenger. And you are being asked to give something away. You're being asked to believe something, and to pray, and to act on something. And if you actually see and feel what this is, you see that your faith must expand to give this away, to extend this presence, more than the words, more than the actions. This is a call. You have been called by God to extend and strengthen what is real and what is true inside. And that's why Jesus uses words like miracle worker or teacher of God. Because these children, they were just out playing. And their game was to send out their voice and echoes through the valleys. Ave Maria. What a, instead of playing like a card game or playing something with dice. Their game is to call out Ave Maria through the countryside. And guess who shows up with that game? Isn't that beautiful? And isn't it beautiful that we have a gift like this? Out of all the centuries of covering over the light, that we have such a direct gift. And it's a call. This is a call. And this call is the most important thing. This call takes priority over absolutely everything. Everything that you value in this world, family, friends, career, self-improvement, learning information, learning skills, growing old. This call takes preference over growing old. It's more important than growing old. It's even more important than growing a day older, because it's so far beyond survival of the body. And the relationships that it's calling us to is to start to see everyone as ourself. Literally. You're not your brother's keeper. You're not your sister's keeper. You literally are your brother. You are your sister. You treat everyone as you treat yourself. And when you have a grievance against a brother or a sister, you hold that on yourself, on your mind. So this is about opening to pierce the veil and open to the light. And that's how deep the context of holy relationship goes. This is not about making a better interpersonal relationship. Far, far, far from it. This is about answering a call in your heart to happiness, to true happiness and joy that comes from God and comes from nothing else but God. It won't come from the world that was made to cover God. I mean, this book actually tells us the world was made as an attack upon God, a place where God can enter not. It's in the book. Why would you invest in the cover of reality when through prayer you can have reality itself? You can know reality. You can have reality revealed to you. So this begins the journey for our three little seers and our three little messengers. As soon as Mother Mary drops the seed of truth and says, pray for world peace, in the midst of what seems like a world war, the seed has dropped. And now the question is, will you tell the truth about the seed or not? The calling you have already received. Now, will you give it away? Because that's the only way you will experience the actuality of the calling, is by giving it away. Not by people-pleasing the world, people-pleasing friends and family and partners, government, society. We're going to see these little messengers are going to show us the way by simply staying true to the seed, to the calling, not compromising, not buckling and giving in to the ego and the ego's world, but simply through prayer and faith of staying with what is true and accepting the messages that they may be extended. So this really relates to our work with A Course in Miracles, because as soon as you are called by God into your function, then all the thoughts and beliefs that are in the unconscious mind will start coming to the surface. And those doubt thoughts are doubt thoughts of who you really are. And you can see with little 10-year-old Lucia that she's already had encounters with her parents, at the church, with the priest at the church, who told her it's probably the devil. A nice message to get from your priest inside the church. And also from the mayor who's so concerned about the town and the reputation of the town. And when you are called by God, you may be faced with family members, with politicians, with friends, dear friends, longtime friends, that may just reflect the doubt thoughts in your own mind of who you are. And to the ego, these are quite convincing witnesses. But to me, this reminds us, I am calling you out of the world. I am calling you out of the sleep, of the dreaming of this world. I'm calling you to remember who you are, who you have always been, who you will forever be. And this is part of the steps of forgiveness, of reaching the holy relationship. You don't achieve the awareness of the holy relationship while you believe in the past. Past thoughts, past roles. You are being called into a state of mind that goes beyond father, mother, sister, brother. It goes beyond the interpersonal. It goes to the remembrance of the light, the I am presence prior to time. And you can see just from these scenes with little Lucia. I mean, now I'm seeing this movie again, the family name Santos, Espiritu Santos, holy. What's the workbook lesson for today? In the day of our calendar years here in February.
My holiness blesses the world.
My holiness blesses the world. Is that a synchronicity? That on this day, the lesson is my holiness blesses the world? Mother Mary is just a symbol of holiness, and she's asking the children to pray for world peace. Blesses the world. Maybe this thing took place back in 1916, but here in February of 2021, it's just as relevant. The symbols are right there for us. We're being asked to bless the world through our own contact with the holiness inside of us. Through the power of our prayer, you can bring an end to the perception of the pandemic. Yes, how about freeing the world of the pandemic through the power of your prayer? My holiness blesses the world. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. My mind is part of God's. It is very holy. You can really begin to see that these children are just showing us that we can take it in and receive the message in our heart and extend the gift to all the world. Because the world is just a perception that generates from the mind. And when you tap into the holiness, then you save the distorted perception. You just save your mind from the distorted perception of the ego. That's what Jesus is teaching us. So it's just begun for these little children. Basically, Lucia is 10 years old, Jacinta, Francisco, maybe 7, and they're friends. They see something. And the 2 girls hear something. And then now they've got something in their awareness that wasn't there before, but now it's there. And now comes the opportunity to forgive. Forgive the past associations. Forgive the doubt thoughts in your mind that are concerned about status, about your standing in the world, how it will be perceived by other people. The mayor is very concerned. He's reflecting that doubt thought of, we can't let these daydreams get out. What kind of impression will that bring to the rest of Spain? Oh my God, what will the Catholic Church think of us? Our little town has little seers that have seen Mother Mary. So you can see just one vision that shows you a closeness to the direct experience of the light is met with a fear that is reflected in all the structures. The religious figures are frightened. The mayor is frightened. Mom is frightened. Talk about hitting home. You realize that if you go for the truth of who you are, you're going to have to release everything else that the ego made up. You're going to have to release all the concepts, all the roles. It doesn't matter if you feel like you've been a people pleaser your entire life. That doesn't matter to the light. The light says, yeah, let it go. Pray for the truth. Don't compromise with your desire for the light. Let it go. I am calling you out of the world. Let your faulty perception of the world go. You have nothing to lose by letting it go, and everything to gain by accepting the truth of who you are. That's the message. And we're just watching it play out here with Lucia, because just by her saying, this is what I saw, and this is what I heard, is generating an enormous storm of doubt for the ego. And now we understand what the Bible meant by, a little child shall lead them. This simple little girl and her two little friends are just saying, basically, I saw this and I heard this. And the storm of the world erupts. Just from that. They really haven't said much more other than I saw this and I heard this. So for those of you that are working with the Course, this is the beginnings of the end of the world as you know it. If you give yourself over to this calling, nothing will ever be the same. Even the apostles, when the apostles would talk to one another while Jesus was sleeping at night, one apostle would say to the next, the world will never be the same. Our lives will never be the same. Nothing will ever be the same as you answer the calling of your heart. Because the entire linear world of time and space is nothing but the projection of a crazy, mad idea. And if you let go of that crazy, mad idea, nothing will appear as it once did. And this is what I mean by it's a perceptual problem. It's not an interpersonal relationship problem. It's not a disease problem. It's not an economic or financial problem. It's a perceptual problem. Looking through a dark filter is not our inheritance. It's not our destiny to keep looking through a dark filter, believing that it's really happening to us. So let's follow our little angel Lucia and see how she handles the storm of doubt that has suddenly been stirred up by I saw this and I heard this. That's for us. Everything will stay just as it used to be. The ego's saying, don't follow the Holy Spirit, don't follow Jesus, don't follow Mother Mary, and everything will go back to the way it used to be. These are the good old days. Ego has to make the past look valuable, look enticing, look alluring. I think we even have a word for it in our human race called nostalgia. Oh, that's supposed to be a positive thing, nostalgia. Being sentimental. What about the present moment? What about eternity? We don't need nostalgia. We don't need sentimental. There are no good old days. The present moment is what we're being called into. And we have to be willing to let go of the past. Even Manuel, the beloved brother who the mother has been praying for to come back. And here she's seeing this dance scene with Manuel coming to her twice. Don't go back to the lady. Don't go back there. So it's really quite simple. You either go toward your calling and you put all your faith in your calling, or you don't, or you cling to the past. Even though Jesus says the past is gone, the ego doesn't like that. The ego wants you to believe in the past. Believe in the concepts. Believe in what has been. And avoid what is now. And the calling is so strong. It's the calling to now. And so little Lucia, she's going through it for all of us. She's showing us the temptations of the world, the temptations to not follow your calling. And Jesus says in the Manual for Teachers, he says, you have been called by God to the holiest function there is. And sacrifice is the giving up of what you want. And then Jesus says, what do you want? Will you sacrifice the world, or will you sacrifice the calling to remember God? And he says this in the Course in so many ways. What do you want? Freedom of the body or freedom of the mind? For both you cannot have. Freedom of the body is a past concept. The body was never free and never will be free because it's just an invention. It's fictitious. And the freedom of the mind is remembering your divinity, your divine mind, through forgiveness of illusions. And yet the ego always is sentimental, always holding freedom of the body. Oh, what a great adventure. Another serial adventure of the body, the hero of the dream. Jesus is saying, don't go there, don't even look there. You've been called in your heart to forgive. So this movie is so relevant for something that seems to have happened in 1916. Here we are with our Course in Miracles, and we are experiencing the very same things that little Lucia is going through. Jacinta, Francesco, they're all showing us the way to holy relationship right here and right now. So this is the part that is the most difficult for the dreaming upside down mind. It's the belief of sacrifice. It's the belief that if you follow the Spirit, there is a cost, there is suffering involved, there is a price to pay. And Jesus tells us, he said, you who are long accustomed to sleep, do not rise up immediately when the chains are taken away. He says, a smile comes to your sleeping face. That you have to go through a period of letting go. And the ego will scream, why is following God causing suffering to loved ones and to other people? But these are just thoughts in the mind. These are the private thoughts. These are the thoughts of sacrifice. that the belief that you have to give up something in the world that is good and real and true in order to wake up to remember God. And in the manual for teachers of the Course, Jesus talks about the stages of the development of trust. And at the beginning, he says, it will seem as if things are being taken away from you. And this is just that your mind is loosening from your belief in them. Jesus is saying you've placed your faith in idols, in symbols, in images. And while you still believe it is a sacrifice to let go of the things of the ego, you will still seem to suffer because of your belief in the ego. But you must relinquish judgment for all time. You must release attack thoughts, even attractive attack thoughts. They are equally upsetting to you as the ones that you don't like. The ego is clever. It can disguise guilt in attractive forms. It can disguise fear in attractive appearances. But this is why the message is always pray. Keep the prayer for forgiveness, the prayer for love. When the mind made up this cosmos and believed it was a reality, it suddenly became seen as a sacrifice to give up illusions and remember the truth. But it cannot be so. You are asked simply to look upon the temporary and see it for what it is, so that you can open up and remember the everlasting. What is valuable? The passing, the temporary, the ephemeral that comes and goes and fades, or that which lasts forever? You cannot value both time and eternity. Time is not real. Eternity is real. So this is where there is a need for faith. This is the need to follow the steps of the Holy Spirit, which leads to the eternal. And I particularly like the symbol of Lucia's father, Antonio. You can see all along, Antonio is walking, is showing up at the appearances, is trying to have faith. His daughter says, do you believe me? He says, I don't know. Antonio is a symbol of a mind that is just starting to open, but still not sure. Antonio is still seen as the father of the family, the breadwinner, providing a house for his wife, his daughters, his son, providing food from the field, from the agriculture. And when all these symbols start to loosen, the people showing up in his field, that was, in his mind, the purpose of the field was to grow food so that his family can survive through the winter. And now it looks as if his field has been repurposed. He has people showing up that are coming there because of their faith, because they have a deep calling for something beyond this world. And he says, yeah, you're destroying the field. You're destroying my family's food. And then the sister who needs to be sent away to work during these times to bring in a little extra money to support the family. This is a symbol of how it is when you follow A Course in Miracles. Because the ego is going to say, you're going to have to give up something valuable and important in order to know God. And the Holy Spirit and Jesus are convincing us through our practice of A Course in Miracles, like Francis talked about on Friday, that you need do nothing. You need merely have the faith in the Holy Spirit. You need merely turn your prayers to God, and everything is given freely, not through your actions, not even through your words, because God knows the prayer of your heart before you even utter one word. And so that is why this is a course in prayer, and a course in expanding faith. And we're seeing it acted out in this movie today. We're seeing that just following the instructions of Mother Mary, she said very simply at the first appearance, please come back at this very day and this very hour for the next 6 months and pray the Rosary. It's not a really complex set of instructions. Show up the same place, the same day and time for the next 6 months and pray the Rosary. Pray for world peace. Now, also we can remember that this is in the context of World War I. Talk about being practical. It's presenting a solution for the world. Pray for peace in the face of what seems to be World War I in Europe. And it's emphasizing the prayer. And of course, the perceptions of the world are denying that prayer. The mayor is more interested in hard work of people and his position and the respect of other people and other countries than he is in this idea of pray for peace. He's used words like daydreaming, lies, all kinds of defenses against the truth. And it's the same with the priest. And it's the same with everyone. They have to make a decision. Do they simply have the faith to follow the prayers and the instructions, or will they build evidence denying the prayers and the instructions? It's the same for all of us. This is a call for faith. And Jesus is telling us that faith always has a strong foundation because Spirit, God, is the foundation of faith. Now, our mind is very powerful, so the question is, do we put our faith in the illusions of the world and the learning of the world and the perception of the world, or do we give our faith to the Holy Spirit for miracles? That's really the only question. And if we have faith in miracles, we will be shown what we need to see. We will feel what we need to feel. And the Spirit convinces us of our reality, that we're not flesh. The mayor was making a joke. He was even putting down divine providence, the mayor. That has been the most important thing in my life, is divine providence. That Holy Spirit always provides. That there's never a moment when we truly lack for anything. That the Spirit will bring us all symbols that help us convince our mind that we're dreaming. That will show us that we've dreamed this world. We're not at the mercy of external forces. But we do have to have the faith in divine providence. As long as we believe that we personally have done something in the past, through our education, through our work, through our physical efforts, through our mental efforts, that have brought us to the perception of where the body is today, then we still don't see. That's not the lesson. Nothing personal in this awakening. So Antonio is told his daughter, I will never leave you. You see how he's channeling the Holy Spirit. I will never leave you. Even when she's asking him, do you believe me? He says, I don't know. But I do know I will never leave you. And that is the faith right there. That is to have the faith that you and your brother are together. That they're whom God has brought together, no man can put asunder. No belief can separate whom God created one in spirit. So here we go. They are now facing the perceptions of poverty and beginning to see more and more that their field is filling up, not with grain. It's actually getting peopled with witnesses of faith, of those that are traveling long distances during times of poverty and world war, because they have faith in what seems to be the unseen, faith in God. And they're coming to fill that field up. And I think that's another symbol for all of us. We need to let the Spirit fill our perception with witnesses of faith, with those who are symbolizing answering the call, who are witnesses to a greater presence than what seems to be separation in this world, and an expanding faith that everything is answered and everything is provided that is necessary for this awakening. To me, these are not just words. This is an actual experience that as you give faith to the Spirit, you are shown symbols that help build your confidence in the Spirit and take you towards certainty, beyond belief, to actual certainty of who you are. An actual experience of the I am presence. Not a theory, not a hypothetical, but an actual experience of God's love. We are being convinced, and this movie is helping us today with our little messengers and seers. Okay, now we're getting down to it. You can see the thought systems lined up. There are those there that are believers, that are praying, that are receiving the prayer, that are praying together and holding their faith to be shown what they are meant to see. And there we have the soldiers and the mayor. The mayor representing the government, which is just a symbol of the laws of this world. The soldiers willing to clear the whole field at the word of the mayor. We have the beliefs of the world of attack and defense, of war, of intellectual knowledge, of all the things of this world on one side of us, and then on the other is faith. Faith that there's something more than this world. Faith that maybe we have made mistakes about what we believe. We have had mistakes about our identity. We have one mistake about who is my creator? Who is my author? Am I an offspring of spirit? Or did I come from the flesh? Am I the product of duality? Or am I the extension of oneness? You have the laws of the world on one side, and then the faith in miracles to be shown the truth. And this is the only question you will ever face. It's just one question. Am I the author of myself, or am I a creation of a being of immense, unrestricted love? If I choose to be the author of myself, I must deal with the consequences of that belief, the suffering, the struggle, the challenges, the temptations, all come from a belief in being something other than spirit. Every consequence of all history is just the result of a belief in something other than God's will, in something other than perfect happiness. So here we have the culminating scene from a field back in 1916 of believers and doubters. And the real question is, what is the witness for my mind? Because whatever witness I'm looking for in this world is the witness I will behold. There is no external world. What you perceive is what you believe. And all it's asked from Spirit, as Mother Mary has just shared the prayer, is, Jesus, I would give all of this that I perceive to you in exchange for your love. That's the trade. The trade-off of everything you have believed about time and space as a trade for Jesus' eternal love, the love of the Christ, the love of God, the love of Mary. That's the trade. So let's watch how this scene plays out from this event over a century ago in terms of Earth time, but I would say just as relevant for us in this very moment. There is a lesson for us, for the mind, that is available to us this very moment. Isn't it getting more obvious? Even the priest says you must say what you feel deep inside, and she smiles. And she's got little Jacinda there, who's constantly saying, yes, she did. She told the truth. She saw it. She saw it. The little 7-year-old is not buckling. I don't think Jacinda knows what an authority figure is. I think she absolutely has nothing in her mind of what an authority figure is. Because what? This is the Monsignor. This is the representation of the Catholic Church that is saying, you're shutting down the church. So we have the mayor who's basically saying, you're messing up my town, you're messing with my image. And the mayor's the authority figure, the Monsignor's the authority figure. She's in the church. You talk about the Spanish Inquisition. This is like the Portuguese Inquisition happening. And she looks over and sees the smiling face of the angel of Portugal, the very face that she saw in the cave at the beginning that showed her the images of war. The very face that showed up among when all the soldiers were their names were being read and the mothers were crying, and she showed up as this comforting angel in the crowd. She has showed up repeatedly. The angel of Portugal is like a witness to her. So she has the angel of Portugal with a gentle smile of assurance reminding her of the truth. She has little Jacinda, she's a firecracker for God. She hasn't buckled once. We saw her. She spoke to us. Well, what about your Francisco, your brother? He doesn't hear. We tell her everything she says. She's just like, that's what faith is. You just stay with what is true in your heart, what is obvious, what is simple, what is clear. And you have to overlook the false authority figures, the ones that are telling you what you must believe, the ones that are telling you what you must do and not do, all of the learned roles from the past that have to be forgiven. Because Jesus is basically teaching us in the Course that the truth is true and only the truth is true. That the truth is love. And the truth does not have an opposite. And how does that apply to our relationships? Well, Jesus is telling us honesty is not actually what you say, and honesty is not actually what you do, and honesty isn't even exactly what you feel. Jesus tells us in the Course that honesty means consistency. You want to be honest, then be consistent. And the only emotion you can feel consistently, actually, is love, is peace, happiness and joy. That's an honest emotion. The rest are masquerading as emotions, but they aren't honest because they aren't consistent. And you may wonder, isn't it possible to be consistently angry? Think about it. Have you ever met anyone that's consistently angry? That means always. Have you ever met anyone who's consistently fearful? Have you ever met anyone that's consistently depressed? I mean always. I mean their entire life, every single moment of every day. No, because there are no consistent illusions. And fear and depression and anger are illusions. They weren't created by God. So here we see again, the witnesses are there. She has the Monsignor, the priest, families standing around her, friends, you've got the whole town. And we know what the mayor's position is. The mayor has made his position quite clear, even to his wife. They've got some interesting things going on in their household. He's even telling his wife about all these superstitious feelings, and she said, well, you married a superstitious woman. He's like, wow, now, let's not go there. Let's not harm the marriage contract here with a debate about superstitions. But you can see the mind is so powerful, it calls forth evidence and witnesses based on what it believes. And if you still believe in the ego, you will draw inconsistent witnesses. But those inconsistent witnesses are not the truth. They're not even honest. If Jesus tells us honesty is consistency and you draw forth conflicting witnesses, that must be a sign of self-deception if you're getting both witnesses. You can't consistently call forth witnesses of fear, but you can and must consistently call forth witnesses of love. But it depends on the power of your interpretation in your mind. It's not in the forms. It's in the interpretation in the mind where we find the holy relationship. As long as you seek for holy relationship in a specific form, you will not know it. But when you open your heart and open your mind and say, show me a new way of looking at this world, may everyone be a witness of your love, then you will be answered consistently. So it's just getting stronger and stronger in this movie. These episodes and scenes are it's just acting it out for our mind. We're starting to see what our task is. It is about correction. It is about atonement. Some people say, well, is that really what Mother Mary is saying? Yeah, atonement for sin. Sin is an error, and atonement is the correction. Sin is not a black mark on your soul, but it is a mistake of who you are. And the correction is the atonement. That's why we practice A Course in Miracles for one purpose, is to accept the atonement for ourselves, for our mind. Okay. Ken and I know this one. You've got to put an end to it. You bring in a psychiatrist. Right? The medical model. Right? Bring in a psychiatrist to make it a ruling of some kind of an assessment or some kind of judgment of mental illness. And in one regard, we are talking right now about mental illness. But it's not a child's mental illness that we're discussing. We're actually looking at our own mental illness right now. Our own psychotic diagnosis of perceiving a world that doesn't even exist, of listening to multiple voices every day and asking the committee, what should I do in my mind? Jesus is telling us, if you train your mind, it's possible to listen to only one voice. It's possible to listen to the voice for God all through the day without interrupting your regular activities in any way. And he's basically telling us you will feel very peaceful and happy if you only hear one voice. But if you persist in being schizophrenic, and if you persist in being psychotic, and if you persist in trying to deny God's will, which Mother Mary is calling you're offending God. I would say God's not really being offended, but it's very offensive if you think you can be something that you're not. And that's what we're facing here. But in the movie here, you can see how far the mayor will go. He's locked up the children. He's interrogating the children. He's providing the motives and the reason why they made everything up. And then finally he has got, it looks like Dr. Sigmund Freud there. He brought in Freud to make the final pronouncement of mental illness, basically. And this is another way that the ego attempts to get around the issue of faith. It's label and dismiss. You are deluded and you must be locked up. And that is one of the basic defense mechanisms of the ego, label and dismiss. Even though our little mystic Jacinta is like, no, it's our. She uses every opportunity to speak the truth without hesitation. And she doesn't really reflect a belief in authority figures. I don't think she's so concerned about Sigmund Freud showing up here to pronounce them as mentally insane or whatever they're going to be diagnosed, And that's the gift of faith. The world can say all manner of things about you. The world can point fingers. The world can bring in psychiatrists. They can even plant false evidence, like in the movie Dark City, where they were planting all the evidence in his coat that he was a murderer. The world can plant all kinds of egos. This is its world. It's got plenty of options to present false evidence. But the key thing is the faith. You must have faith in the truth. And if you have faith in love to carry you through, you shall be carried through. So, to me, it's kind of interesting here where now, basically, the mayor is so happy that Sigmund has shown up here that he's finally going to have a resolution. And if Dr. Freud here doesn't give him the right answer, well, you know what the ego will attempt, What's it going to take? Do I have to bribe you? Do I have to, it will just resort to more tactics because it's going for evidence. It needs a diagnosis of illness and basically to point the finger at these little saints and say that they are lying. But the ego itself is a lie, so all it can do is try to generate evidence in this world of guilt, of deception, of lies. But it all comes from one lie. It comes from the belief that you can be something that you're not. It's from the belief that you can be time-space-based instead of eternity-based. And Jesus is a way shower. He's just with us right now, and he's just saying, don't believe anything that you perceive. Keep your prayer in your heart. Keep your faith open. For those of you that are part of our Holy Relationship weekend, you remember it was yesterday, Calico was on there giving us the witness. Calico's a long-time dedicated student of the Course. And Calico was just saying, with her shoulders shrugged and her arms out, I don't think I can really reliably believe anything that my five senses are showing me. Not anything. And she was even giving us examples of in her daily life of how she couldn't put any faith in what her five senses were showing. And that's it. That's what we have to remember as we watch this movie, that the five senses are part of the ego's deceptions to bring forth false witnesses that deny our true eternal nature, our true reality. Okay, here we go. So, little Lucia, she sees her mother very ill in the bed. She doesn't even want to go into the same room, even though her mother says, Lucia, come here. And this is for all of us, because Lucia is reacting in this way because she feels guilt. Even with all the faith that she's had through everything, she still feels there's a contradiction. She still feels she cannot bear to see this scene with her mother. She goes in there briefly, but she runs out. She runs out, and she runs out to the field, because this is what you must face in spiritual awakening. You must not succumb to the ego's perception, even if it's mother in bed, coughing. These are perceptions. You need to have strength. You need to go with the faith that's beyond these perceptions of death and destruction. And even for Lucia, now we see that she's run out to the field toward where they've built the altar, and she is crawling. She is on her knees. She is crawling. And she has her rosary beads, and she is crawling and she is praying. I will use the word groveling. She is groveling. This is where your mind believes that you have to make a bargain with God. Like, please, let my mother live. You see, her knees are dragging on the dirt, and she's down in that position. And that is a beautiful symbol to us all of how we have felt with certain things in this world. Luz talked about that when your beloved husband was going to leave you. Luz was there, and she had to face that perception. She had to pray. She had to have the faith. She knew that she had to give it over. And that's where Luz got her strength to carry on in the face of her beloved husband leaving her. She grew stronger in her faith. She grew closer to God. And that is what Lucia is going through right now in this movie. There she is in front of that altar, and she's on her knees, and she's dragging her knees. She's coming to the Divine Mother. She's coming to Mary, but she's dragging her knees almost like, this is unbearable. I cannot bear. She's already said, I can't do this if it hurts other people. And what is the symbol of hurting other people except to see your mother in bed, gasping for air? That's just another perception of the world, but she's like saying, I can't bear this anymore. And I would say again, this is showing us all how deep the belief in sacrifice goes. Jesus says, you believe many strange things, but the strangest of all your beliefs is the beliefs that you can lose the ones that you love. That's what she's up against, is the belief that she could lose the ones that she loved, her mother, just by following the Spirit, by following Mother Mary. And if you remember, there was a time when they were out in the horse-drawn carriage, and they were sitting there, mother and daughter, side by side, and then the mother was reminded and had believed she'd lost her son Manuel, and she got so angry at Lucia then that she started beating Lucia and beating her, and she beat her into the back of the tractor, and then she beat her into the corner, and Lucia had to literally leave the carriage and run away because her mother had so much anger come up and basically said, if Manuel doesn't come home, it's all your fault. There again was an example of the ego's anger. Look what you've done to me. It wasn't really that Lucia had done anything wrong, but the belief in loss is so dark. A mother's belief, will say, the mind's belief, but seemingly as a mother who could lose her beloved Manuel, was so dark that the mother beat her daughter and screamed at her and chased her away. And now it's flipped around where the mother is in the bed gasping for air, and Lucia is going out, and she's on her knees now because she's like facing this thing, do I have to bear this? Do I have to bear this? And all of us have to go through the belief in loss, through that belief in darkness, through the belief in sacrifice, through the belief that there's a price or a cost that we have to pay in order to know ourselves as God created us. And Jesus is telling us over and over in his book, it's not true. There is no sacrifice required to know who you are. In fact, you are who you are, and you always be who you are, and no belief to the contrary can change the way God created you. You're innocent, eternally innocent. There is nothing that can come between you and God. You may believe you can separate from God, but you can't. That's the good news of the Gospels, and that's the good news of the Course. Separation from God is absolutely impossible. But you must be willing to face the belief in darkness. You must be willing to move through that belief and be taken into the light. So that's what Luce went through when her husband left, and yet she grew stronger. That's what happens to all of us. Even when things seem to fall away in our perception, we grow stronger and stronger in our faith, because what is true is there for us to accept. All we have to do is accept the truth. We don't make it. We don't make the truth. Truth is there. It just is. But we have to forgive the world if we're going to accept the truth. So let's see what happens here with Lucia. She is literally crawling on the dirt towards that shrine, that altar that was erected, because she is desperate to cling to her faith in this moment. So I have to set the scene for you. This is the Virgin's day of her final appearance. She has basically said that there would be a miracle for the world. She's told everybody, along with her other instructions, and the day has arrived, and it is black, it is gray, it is pouring down rain. All of the faithful, hundreds of them, are there praying at the site, and it is dark. And to me, this is very symbolic. When you go for God, the ego is going to throw everything conceivable to stop you from believing in miracles, to stop you from the light. So it's very symbolic. Here it is, the final day of the appearance, and it's pouring rain, and it's dark, and everybody is showing up. It's kind of like I feel sometimes with all of us. We're showing up in the darkness with hope, with faith in our heart for miracles, with faith that everything that Jesus promised us in the Bible, in the Course, that it's true, that it's real. And here they are, and it's rainy and dark, and Mother Mary has promised she's going to be there. And she's promised a miracle for the world. And here are our three little mystics. They've been praying, doing the Rosary for, this is 6 months now. And here it comes down to, this is almost like a showdown day. All we need is Al Pacino playing the devil going, aha, look at this. Here's your dark world. Let's just see what Mother Mary's going to come up with on her final appearance. And like Al Pacino is played in the movie The Devil's Advocate. In that movie, he claims the whole 20th century was his because of all the dark things that happened: world wars, plagues, strife, all kinds of things. And here we are. Now, this is just symbolic of the mind. Even in your darkest hour, even when you believe there's no hope, that's what this final scene of the movie is symbolizing for us, because these little ones, Jacinta and her brother and Lucia, they have kept the faith and faced enormous numbers of doubt thoughts and temptations to lose the faith. And now we come down to the scene where they've all showed up. I mean, all of the faithful have showed up there, very, very trusting, following Mother Mary's guidance. And this is the final month, the final appearance that she had said, I will come to the same place and same time for 6 months. So I think this is, again, for all of us, this is the point in the movie where we have to say, what am I looking for? You know, even Albert Einstein said there's two ways to look at the world. One way is that everything's a miracle, and the other way is nothing is a miracle. I think in this movie, Jacinta reflects to us the belief that everything's a miracle, and Mr. Mayor is doing a good job at reflecting the belief that nothing is a miracle. There are no miracles. Religion is superstitious, that there's no point into anything that's happened that in his mind is just a lie, period. And for the faithful, they actually are the believers, you know, that this is going somewhere, that this is leading somewhere, that maybe I have been mistaken about everything in the world, and maybe there is a God, and there is a light, and there is love. So here we go. Enjoy it. Enjoy the final experiences here of Fatima. It's all for your mind. Take it in. Drink it in. Beautiful. Beautiful. So it was nice at the end, you saw some of the things. In 1928, Lucia goes into the convent and dedicates her life to devotion to prayer for the rest of her life. I think she lived to be into her 90s. 97. Mother Mary said that the other two would go to heaven soon, and it would be a long, long while before, because Jesus had a mission or something. It was something like that for her. She lived to be 97 in her life of devotion. This is a glimpse into, first of all, they call it the miracle of the Son. Probably many of you have not seen a movie where you see a mass miracle. Everyone talks about mass shootings and genocides. That's a mass miracle. And you don't see that very often, because most of the time they're highly individualized, as Francis was sharing on Friday. But also you see that, I think the other two besides Lucia were canonized by Pope Francis as saints, and all of that is just form symbols. And that's why I would advise any of you, if you really want to keep opening up, investigate the lives of the mystics and the saints. I think that's a better use of your time than watching the news. If you want some good news, investigate the lives of the mystics and saints. That'll light your mind up. That's evidence and witnesses of giving your whole life over. And I think Frances did share that maybe on Friday, where she was saying to me at one point, what's it going to take, to really experience enlightenment? And I think she said that I told her, just devote the rest of your life to it. Isn't that obvious? Isn't that simple? I mean, you can see it. It's kind of like the end of that movie, What the Bleep. Did some of you ever see What the Bleep? At the very end of What the Bleep, we have Fred Alan Wolf, a quantum physicist, saying, don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself, as his white hair is flying all over the place. And that's how the movie ends. Don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself. Give yourself over to the Spirit. Give your whole heart to the Spirit. Let Jesus lift you up, 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 because that's where reality is found, is in realizing you're the living Christ, and you've always been the living Christ, and nothing could ever mar that or cover that. So I'm so grateful that we got to share this experience together, including the miracle of the sun. Mother Mary, first the rain stops, then the clouds part, then the sun shows up, and then the sun seems to come so close that people go scurrying away. They think the sun is falling on them. And to me, that just again is another symbol about how there's so much fear of the light. Don't be afraid of hurricanes and tornadoes. Don't be afraid of pandemics. Don't be afraid of the projections of the ego. And don't be afraid of the ego. Who you are is divine. Who you are is holy. And with the power of your prayer, you dispel the ego. The ego has nothing on you. You have everything on it. I remember when I had this little peace house in Cincinnati one day, I decided to, it was part of a New Jerusalem community in the past, but I decided to take a walk, a prayerful walk. So I walked up these steps, and I came up to this Catholic church that was at the top of the hill. And I looked around, and I looked over, and it was this beautiful, serene statue of Mother Mary. And I went over and she had her beads and she was very prayerful and she had this most serene look on her face. So I just sat down at the little bench and sat there in prayer with Mother Mary. And then I looked at their statue, her gown, her robes and everything. And at the bottom, I looked at the bottom of the statue and she had her little bare feet, just like in the movie here. Her little bare feet there. And then I got up and I went up closer and there was a snake under her foot and there was an apple stuffed in the snake's mouth and she was standing on top of the snake and the snake with its fangs was, the old story in Genesis about the snake tempting Eve to take a bite of the apple and out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Oh, Mother Mary was on top of the snake, and she had that snake underfoot, and the apple was stuffed in the snake's mouth. I will send you off now to a break and to your beautiful things, and I will leave you with the words from Mother Mary. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Temptation is underfoot. Thank you. Have a great break. Enjoy your breakout rooms, and I'll see you back in a little while. We'll talk about what this movie has done to your heart. Okay.